Whenever the concept of a grid-down, biological apocalypse is brought up, it is inevitably met with the ultimate steel man argument. Wouldn't the army just shoot them? The argument sounds incredibly compelling on its surface. The United States Armed Forces is the most technologically advanced and heavily armed military apparatus in human history. We have Abrams tanks that eat anti-tank missiles for breakfast. We have AC-130 gunships capable of levelling entire grid squares in a matter of seconds. The idea of them losing seems absurd. The idea that a shuffling, mindless horde of rotting corpses or rabidly infected humans could defeat the military seems like pure Hollywood fiction. But that assumption betrays a fatal misunderstanding of what modern warfare actually is. Wars are not won by massive firepower alone. Wars are won by logistics, secure supply chains, rules of engagement, and strategic doctrine. The military is a massive, complex machine designed to fight rational adversaries. It targets supply lines, destroys command nodes, and breaks the enemy will to fight. A decentralized biological swarm has no supply lines to cut. It has no command and control infrastructure to bomb. It has no morale to break. If you rely on the military to save you during a catastrophic biological event, you are making a fatal error. They will lose, and they will lose in exactly 72 hours. I am going to walk you through exactly why the greatest fighting force on Earth collapses, why the government cannot save you, and what you must do to survive. Phase 1. The event. Hours 0 through 4. To understand why the military fails, we must first understand how they are trained to fight. Modern tactical doctrine relies on the concept of the center of gravity. Take out the enemy factories, their leadership, or their civilian support, and the unit breaks. A mindless biological swarm has no center of gravity. It is pure, unadulterated consumption. The OODA loop is instantaneous. The swarm observes prey, and it attacks. There is no hesitation. When fighting a human enemy downrange, if you kill 30% of an enemy unit, that unit typically becomes combat ineffective. The survivors retreat. Shoot a combatant in the leg, they go down screaming. It takes 2 buddies to drag them off the battlefield. That removes 3 rifles from the fight. A reanimated or infected swarm does not care. Destroy 90% of a horde, the remaining 10% keeps coming with the exact same ferocity. Blow off their legs, they drag themselves toward your line. In standard attrition warfare, the enemy relies on bullets, beans, and bandages shipped to the front lines. A biological swarm's logistics is the very population it is attacking. Every time the enemy successfully strikes a civilian, their army grows by 1, and the defending force loses a protected asset. The military is simply not doctrinally prepared to fight an enemy that uses exponential biological growth as its primary method of troop reinforcement. The math is completely inverted. The more you protect, the more you lose. When the sirens start, hope is not a strategy. Most people guess they have enough food and medical supplies, but the math always says otherwise. Do not guess with your family on the line. Go to protocolsurvival.com, calculate your survival score, and enroll in our free Catastrophe Survival 101 course right now. Get the tactical training and baseline inventory established before you actually need it. The command center is open. Get your house in order. During the first 4 hours of the event, the government will not realize it is facing an apocalyptic threat. The fog of war is thick. Initial reports of mass violence, rioting, and cannibalism will be treated as localized civil unrest or a public health crisis. The response falls to local law enforcement. A standard police cruiser carries a shotgun, an AR platform rifle, and a few spare magazines. They are completely unequipped for high-casualty sustained combat against an enemy that does not retreat from tear gas. Hospitals become the first operational casualties. EMTs bring the first wave of bite victims into overcrowded triage centres. The infection breaches the most critical infrastructure within minutes. Doctors and nurses are neutralised while trying to render aid. As the hospitals go dark, the police realise rubber bullets and beanbags are totally ineffective. SWAT teams expend their tactical reserves in the first hour. The 911 dispatch centres light up, then they go completely silent. The thin blue line breaks before the sun even sets. You might think the National Guard would instantly step in, lock down the highways and restore order. That is the classic counter-argument. But legally and logistically, it is a fantasy. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 strictly forbids active-duty federal troops from enforcing domestic law on American soil. Politicians will freeze in terror. No state governor wants to be the one who orders the military to open fire on unarmed, sick American civilians. Bureaucracy kills faster than the virus. To deploy active-duty military on US soil, the President must invoke the Insurrection Act. This requires absolute confirmation of the threat, immense political will, and precious time. During this hesitation, the math of the outbreak compounds. Epidemiologists use the basic reproduction number to measure transmission. If an infected individual bites just 3 people before being put down, the growth is exponential. By the time politicians overcome their hesitation and give the green light, the major metropolitan areas are already mathematically lost. For the civilian on the ground, the sensory overload is paralysing. The sound of distant gunfire, the smell of burning rubber from abandoned vehicles, the relentless wailing of sirens that nobody is responding to. Normalcy bias kicks in. People will stand on their porches recording the chaos on their phones, assuming authorities have it under control. This is the deadliest phase of the event. Denial is a comfort blanket that will get you killed. When you see the breakdown begin, you must accept reality immediately. The first panic hits the supermarkets and gas stations. The modern world operates on just-in-time logistics. Supermarkets do not hold months of supplies in the back room. They hold enough for maybe 3 days, relying on constant truck deliveries. Within 3 hours of the public realising the severity of the threat, store shelves are stripped to the bare metal. Violence erupts over bottled water and canned goods. If you are caught in this initial scramble, your chances of surviving the first night plummet. Phase 2. The Lockdown. Days 1 through 14. This is where the 72-hour military collapse happens in real time. The Insurrection Act is finally signed. National Guard and active duty elements are mobilised. But having millions of rounds of ammunition in a secure bunker at the McAllister Army ammunition plant in Oklahoma is entirely different from having it in the magazine of an infantryman fighting for his life in the streets of Chicago. Supply lines are already severed by civilian panic. Let us break down the brutal math of an infantry combat load. A standard Army infantryman carries 210 rounds. That is 730-round magazines. Assume a highly trained soldier under extreme stress achieves a 20% headshot accuracy rate against an erratic target. It takes 5 rounds to neutralize one threat. A single soldier puts down exactly 42 targets before their rifle clicks empty. Imagine a platoon of 40 soldiers facing 10,000 infected pouring out of a subway system. They are overrun in minutes. The entire platoon neutralizes 1,600 threats. Then they are empty. You cannot fight an ocean of bodies with finite brass. Furthermore, weapons have physical thermal limits. Sustained rapid fire melts rifle barrels. The M4 carbine is not designed to fire continuously for hours without resting. Gas tubes will melt and weapons will jam catastrophically. The sheer physical exhaustion of fighting a relentless wave of bodies, aiming, firing, reloading, clearing malfunctions, will result in total combat fatigue. They run out of bullets before the city runs out of zombies. When the ammunition runs out, the frontline units need an immediate resupply. In conventional warfare, resupply takes hours, coordinated through secure routes. In this scenario, the streets are completely clogged with abandoned civilian vehicles, panicked refugees, and roving swarms. Resupply trucks cannot simply drive up to the front line. The civilian highway system is transformed into a 100-mile parking lot. Armoured personnel carriers and logistics trucks are boxed in. If the military supply convoys cannot reach the cities, the frontline grunts are left to die. The military relies on a tooth-to-tail ratio of roughly 1 to 8. For every 1 infantryman pulling a trigger, there are 8 support personnel: mechanics, cooks, supply clerks, and truck drivers. These support personnel are not extensively trained for intense frontline close-quarters combat. When the front line collapses, the swarm instantly overruns the logistical tail. Medical staging areas and motor pools are decimated. Once the tail is cut, the tooth dies. Without constant resupply, frontline units abandon their heavy equipment and flee on foot. Another common argument is to just use tanks to crush them. This fundamentally misunderstands heavy armour. An Abrams tank is an awe-inspiring machine, but it is designed to kill other tanks at long distances in open terrain. In an urban environment, tanks have terrible visibility. They require infantry support to prevent enemies from sneaking into their blind spots. More importantly, tanks are logistical nightmares. An Abrams gets less than 1 mile to the gallon of jet fuel. It requires a massive tail of vulnerable fuel trucks. If the fuel trucks are ambushed by the swarm, trapped in civilian traffic jams, or the drivers abandon their posts, the tank becomes a 70-ton paperweight. The crew inside may be safe from bites, but once they run out of fuel and coaxial machine gun ammunition, they are trapped. It becomes a steel coffin. They sit inside, waiting to starve to death, while surrounded by thousands of infected bodies pounding on the hatches. Armour is a liability when you cannot keep the engine running. Air power is equally useless in the early stages of the outbreak. You cannot carpet bomb Atlanta or Dallas. The primary directive of the military in this scenario is population protection and evacuation. You cannot use Hellfire missiles or heavy munitions in a mixed population environment where 60% of the people on the ground are uninfected civilians trying to flee. The rules of engagement forbid it. By the time command writes off a city as lost and authorises kinetic strikes, the infection has already spread down the highways. While the military collapses outside, you are locked down inside. This is why you prepare. You do not stockpile water just to check a box on a survival list. You secure a water filter so your child does not look up at you with cracked, bleeding lips, begging for a drink you do not have. Guilt is a stronger motivator than fear. You build your inventory so you never have to watch the people you love suffer because of your own complacency. You must become the supply chain. The failure of military logistics heavily reinforces the danger of the highway system. If a 10-ton armoured military truck cannot navigate the civilian gridlock, your SUV certainly will not. Bugging out on major thoroughfares during the first 72 hours of a mass panic event is a death sentence. You will become trapped in a traffic jam surrounded by a concentrated, panicked population. That is the exact breeding ground for a viral swarm. Your primary survival strategy must be to bug in and shelter in place immediately. You must have a hardened, defensible location. Equip your home with blackout curtains to hide light signatures at night. Reinforce the doors and secure the ground floor windows. You must have enough calories and water to outlast the initial wave of chaos. You wait for the civilian panic to subside, the traffic to die down, and the swarm to disperse before making any movement to a secondary rural location. The streets belong to the dead and the desperate. Let them fight it out while you remain invisible. By day 3, the municipal grid begins to fail. Power plants require human operators. When those operators abandon their posts to save their own families, the turbines spin down. The lights go out. The water pumps stop pushing pressure through the pipes. the internet backbone fragments. This blinds the military communications and isolates every surviving household. Centralized command and control shatters. Without the grid, the remaining military splinter factions retreat to hardened bunkers, effectively removing themselves from the fight. You are now entirely on your own. During the lockdown, sanitation becomes your most dangerous enemy. Without running water, human waste accumulation breeds cholera and dysentery. The swarm outside is terrifying, but a microscopic bacterial infection inside your walls will kill your family just as completely. You must establish a dedicated waste management system. Heavy-duty trash bags, 5-gallon buckets, and bleach. Sickness drains calories, demands water, and creates noise. A coughing fit in a silent neighborhood is a death warrant. Hygiene is not a luxury, it is a critical pillar of your operational security. You must ration your calories with brutal efficiency. Stockpile nutrient-dense, shelf-stable foods that do not require cooking. Boiling water on a camp stove creates smell and light signatures that drift out of your ventilation. Freeze-dried foods, MREs, and caloric staples are mandatory. You need energy to stay vigilant, but you must stay completely still. The psychological toll of the grind begins to set in. 14 days of sitting in the dark, listening to the screams outside fade into a terrifying, unnatural silence. As hospitals become ground zero for the outbreak, you must be capable of treating your own trauma. You cannot dial 911 for a deep laceration. A robust, individual first aid kit is non-negotiable. Tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, chest seals, and broad-spectrum antibiotics are your lifeline. Do not stockpile medical gear just to feel safe. Stockpile it so you do not have to watch a preventable infection take the life of someone you love. You are the trauma surgeon now. Get the training and get the gear. Phase 3. The Emergence. Days 15 through 30. Your initial supplies are dwindling, and the immediate panic outside has settled into a grim new reality. The massive hordes have fractured into roaming packs. It is time to scout. But the environment you are stepping into is completely unrecognizable. The military presence is gone. The vehicles are rusted-out husks. The streets are littered with the detritus of a failed civilization. You must move with extreme caution. The rules of engagement have changed from bug-in to tactical scavenging. During your scouting, you'll find the remnants of government safe zones, FEMA camps, high school gymnasiums, and military base perimeters. These were the worst places on Earth. The military breakdown proves that centralized triage centers became death traps. It takes only one bitten civilian hiding their wound out of fear or hoping for a cure to bypass the perimeter. Once the infection was inside the wire, the base fell from within. The close quarters layout of refugee tents guaranteed rapid transmission. Never approach a government-mandated evacuation zone. Military bases are not medieval castles. While they have perimeter fencing and armed guards at the gates, they are deeply integrated into the civilian world. Tens of thousands of civilian contractors and non-combat personnel live on massive installations like Fort Cavazos or Fort Liberty. When command ordered them to establish safe zones, it was a fatal humanitarian impulse. The wire was breached by the very people they were sworn to protect. Now, those bases are massive tombs, filled with infected soldiers wearing body armor that makes them harder to kill. When you step out into that wasteland, you need access to your protocols. When the grid goes dark, the cloud goes with it. You need a command center that works offline. I built Protocol Survival to be that exact system. Secure your inventory, track your medical expiration dates, and access your free training modules now, while you still have a cellular signal. Do not wait until the cell towers drop. Download the Protocol Survival app today and establish your localized offline network. You are the architect of your own survival. You will find abandoned military checkpoints. You might wonder why heavily armed troops just left their gear. We must address the human element. Military personnel are trained to shoot enemy combatants in foreign nations. They are not psychologically conditioned to gun down American teenagers or their own neighbours in the streets of their hometowns. The hesitation caused by this moral injury cost thousands of soldiers their lives in the opening hours. Soldiers are humans first. When the command structure collapsed, their first thought was not of the mission. When a soldier realizes the city is lost, their priority shifts to their spouse and children hiding in a suburban home 20 miles away. As the situation degraded, mass desertion was a statistical certainty. Soldiers took their weapons, appropriated tactical vehicles, and went AWOL to protect their own families. This rapid loss of manpower accelerated the total collapse of command and control. The gear you find abandoned at checkpoints is a testament to a father or mother choosing their family over a broken oath to a fallen government. When conducting scouting operations, your danger assessment must be flawless. You are looking for untouched pharmacies, distribution warehouses, and hardware stores. But remember, if it looks untouched, it might be a trap set by desperate human survivors. The infected swarm is predictable. They move toward sound and movement. Hostile humans are cunning. They set ambushes. They use bait. When you move through the urban rubble, you must treat every blind corner and every shadow as a fatal threat. You do not kick down doors. You observe from a distance. The military failed because they attempted to hold terrain and fight a war of attrition against an enemy with limitless reinforcements. Do not repeat their mistake. Your firearm is not for clearing the streets of zombies. It is a tool of absolute last resort to break contact and escape. If an entire army platoon cannot carry enough ammo to kill a horde, neither can you. Prioritize suppression and evasion. Every single shot fired is a dinner bell echoing through the city blocks. Stealth and speed are your true primary weapons. Suppressors on firearms are highly recommended for any serious prepper. They do not make the gun silent like in the movies, but they heavily mitigate the acoustic signature that attracts both the biological swarm and hostile human scavengers. Furthermore, standardizing your calibers is critical. Run 9mm, 5.56 NATO, and 22 long rifle. These are the rounds you might actually scavenge from abandoned police cruisers or military supply dumps. Exotic hunting calibers are useless when the sporting goods stores are completely looted and burned to the ground. Your first contact with the infected during a scout will test your discipline. You will see them shambling through a parking lot. Your instinct might be to raise your rifle and eliminate the threat. Suppress that urge. You do not engage unless your life is in immediate jeopardy. Slipping away into an alleyway and taking a 2-mile detour is always vastly superior to a 10-second firefight. You conserve your ammunition, you protect your physical energy, and you maintain your hidden profile. Let the dead wander. You focus on the mission. Phase 4, the long haul. Days 31 to 100. If you have made it this far, the rules of survival shift entirely. The weak are gone. The unprepared have perished. The landscape is now populated only by apex predators. The biological swarm has thinned out due to starvation and decay, but the remaining infected are concentrated in dark spaces and ruined buildings. The social collapse is absolute. Paper money is worthless. The new currency is calories, brass, and medical supplies. Barter becomes a very dangerous game. While isolation was absolutely critical in the first phase, long-term survival requires a localized center of gravity. The lone wolf mentality is a myth perpetrated by bad fiction. The lone wolf dies of an infected cut on his hand because he cannot gather firewood while running a fever. The lone wolf freezes because they cannot sleep and maintain a perimeter watch at the same time. Humans are pack animals. To survive the long haul, you must build a mutual assistance group. a carefully vetted network of highly capable individuals. A mutual assistance group of 5 to 15 people with complementary skills is incredibly resilient. You need a nurse to manage infections, a mechanic to rig solar arrays, a tactical shooter for perimeter defense, and someone who understands agriculture. This small unit is far more adaptable than a massive, bloated military battalion. A MAG is small enough to maintain strict operational security and hygiene, but large enough to establish a 24-hour localized watch rotation. You sleep soundly because you know the person on the rifle outside is a professional. The failure of the military macrologistics highlights the absolute necessity of your micrologistics. Your MAG must create sustainable systems, rainwater catchment basins rooted into heavy-duty filtration setups, raised garden beds hidden in walled backyards to supplement your freeze-dried stores, solar generators to keep your battery banks charged for night vision and encrypted radios. You are no longer just surviving the initial shockwave, you are building a microscopic civilization in the ashes of the old world. You replace the fragile global supply chain with a rugged local one. As the months drag on, your primary kinetic threat shifts from the biological swarm to other human survivors. Desperation strips away morality. Groups that failed to prepare will organize into marauding bands. They will look for smoke from your cooking fires. They will look for trails worn into the grass leading to your water source. This is why operational security must remain absolutely perfect. You do not patrol the neighborhood in full tactical gear looking intimidating. You stay grey. You look like a ruined, looted house to anyone passing by on the street. Light and noise discipline will keep your MAG alive. A single flashlight beam escaping a window crack at 2 in the morning can be seen for miles in a grid-down city. It signals that someone inside has batteries, which means they have gear, which means they have food. Your blackout curtains must be perfectly sealed. When you communicate over radios, use brief encrypted bursts. The military failed because they were massive, loud, and tied to conventional supply lines. You succeed by being small, totally silent, and completely self-reliant. Those 70-ton Abrams tanks and Stryker vehicles that failed the military during the first week are now monumental resources for you. Once the immediate area is cleared of the infected, abandoned military hardware is a goldmine for a prepared MAG. You are not looking for the big guns. You are extracting the heavy-duty batteries, the medical kits left in the troop compartments, the water purification tablets, and the tools. The military machine died because it could not be fueled, but its corpse provides the raw materials for your micrologistics. By day 100, the environment takes its toll on the swarm. Without a functioning metabolism to heal wounds, weather destroys the infected. Freeze and thaw cycles shatter their musculature. Extreme heat accelerates putrefaction. The exponential threat that crushed the army in 3 days is eventually reduced by the unforgiving reality of nature. But do not get complacent. A single dormant infected trapped in a dark basement is just as deadly on day 100 as it was on day 1. You clear structures with the exact same lethal precision. Your greatest weapon in the long haul is not your rifle or your plate carrier. It is your mental resilience. The psychological weight of living in a post-collapse world will break weak minds. You will lose people. You will face setbacks that seem insurmountable. You must cultivate a mindset that accepts extreme hardship as the baseline reality. You do not mourn the old world while on watch. You focus entirely on the execution of your standard operating procedures. Discipline equals survival. When motivation fades, discipline is the only thing left standing. When you look at your family, sheltered behind reinforced doors, hydrated from rainwater you purified, and fed by stores you meticulously gathered, you realize the truth. You did not just survive a catastrophe, You engineered a sanctuary. The effort, the money, and the time you spent preparing when everyone else called you paranoid was the down payment on your family's existence. The government planners failed because they relied on a fragile system. You succeeded because you built a robust one. Your preparation is the ultimate expression of love and duty. The steelman argument of military superiority relies on a fundamentally flawed premise. It assumes advanced technology and massive stockpiles can solve a problem that is inherently biological, decentralized, and exponential. Tanks, jets, and infantry battalions are tools designed for human warfare. Against a mindless, self-replicating swarm that feeds off the very population the military is trying to protect, the strategic doctrine of the armed forces collapses under its own logistical weight. In 72 hours, the greatest military machine in history becomes a fragmented memory of a lost empire. For the prepared citizen, this thought experiment is not a cause for despair. It is a vital call to action. You cannot rely on a 911 dispatch, a FEMA truck, or a National Guard convoy. True security in an unpredictable world requires physical fitness, tactical training, mental resilience, and a deep, localized stockpile. You are your own first responder. You are the supply line. The cavalry is not coming because the cavalry is dead. The grid isn't what keeps the lights on, it's what keeps the monsters out.